Yo, welcome to Alpha Omega University. We're back with a new episode. Today we got episode 27, movement and positioning. I know a lot of you guys have been asking me to make an episode specifically on positioning in general, right? And here's the thing, it's a really hard thing to kind of explain because it has nothing to do with specific situations. It has everything to do with strategy, tactics, I guess understanding the environment around you, right? There is no like, okay, you're fighting a territory. It doesn't mean you got to stand on the west side every time, right? Or on the tower or whatever, right? Like making statements like that when regarding positioning is the exact thing you want to get away from, right? So it's very, very hard to explain how to talk about movement and positioning and what we need to be or where we need to be when, without actually going over some really critical, important things about, well, what does it mean to stand in a certain location versus in a different location, right? What are the positives and negatives of standing, to the northeast of your enemy versus the direct east, right? Or north of your Zerg or south of your Zerg. Like, there's positives and negatives in everything, and if you don't understand those, then nothing I tell you about where you should be standing matters, right? Because you need to understand the concept to be able to understand where you should be standing in order to make the best place possible. But anyway, that's the episode. We're gonna get into it in a minute. But I want to show you guys something. We got to kind of go over a few things here because we did have an update drop a couple days ago. Was like 4 days ago, right? So this last week we had a new update in the game, and this update is going to be very important for the game as a whole. Let me zoom it in because I know some of you guys might not be able to see. It might be a little small. Let me go back. There it is. All right, so I think it's probably a little better this way. So essentially, we're going to run through this real quick. All right, we're going to just look at the things that kind of affect the changes, the patch notes that have affected ZvZ in some shape or form. We're also going to talk a little bit about, what things don't really affect much, right? Like there's always some updates that seem to make a big fucking impact and they actually don't make any impact at all, and people are kind of just over the top with them, because every time there's changes, there's hype behind those changes. Okay, so we're gonna read through the fluff, we're gonna read through all the bullshit. I'm just gonna give you the breakdown real quick on these updates, what I think about them, what I think about how they affect the meta, how they affect what people are gonna play moving forward. And then there's also a bug that came out with this update, and I'll talk to you guys about that when we get into it. But yeah, so that's going to be today. After we're done with the real quick summary of the updates, we're going to go into the episode, right? Movement and positioning. So if you're looking to watch this video like later on, or you can't watch the whole video or whatever, I know it's like hour and a half, 2 hour episodes, right? They're long. There's a lot of information. It's a lot of important stuff. But if you want to watch it later, whatever, you can always, pause it, watch it later. I'm gonna be uploading them as always on YouTube. So make sure you guys subscribe on YouTube, subscribe or follow on Twitch if you want to. You don't have to. The schedule is listed on the Twitch channel on the About section. You just got to scroll down. It's going to be right there. That's the schedule. We're doing one episode per week every Friday. So today's Friday for me. I know some of you guys are in the EU and European time zones. I'm in the North America time zone. So for me, it's Friday right now, and it's 00 UTC. So this is the time that we do it every Friday. All right. So I don't want to get too mixed up in a bunch of random nonsense. So let's get to it. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them in the chat. I am reading. I always try to read and I always try to respond to as much as possible. Okay. And if you have any questions and this is not live, you're watching it like later on YouTube or whatever, drop a comment. I will respond to them. I appreciate that. So, all right. Let's look at these updates real quick. So the first thing, I skipped the top part, and the top part is not very important for ZvZ purposes, except for this part here, the hideout energy and power changes. Okay. This is very complicated. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. Just know that in general, they're making it easier to knock down HQs. All right. So headquarters. So I'm not saying that that's not important. That's hella fucking important. I've been talking to people about HQs being like really, really hard to destroy for a very long time, right? So I'm very happy for this change. Absolutely very happy for this change. However, you know, when it comes to the actual ZvZ narratives, it doesn't actually change metas, nothing like that, right? So yeah, this is important, but again, if you want to look at the numbers and kind of theory craft and you know, stuff for wars and stuff like that, this is important, but not for CVZ. So that's why we're going to skip it. We got some Crystal Arena stuff, 5v5 stuff, you know, unimportant for CVZ. So you guys can read that kind of stuff if you want on your own time. If you see the link, it's up here. But what I always do, if you don't know how to find these things, by the way, I literally just go to Google and I type in Albion Online patch notes, right? Or I actually write patch list. Yeah, I type patch list, and what it sends me to is the patch list, right? And so you just click on the latest patch, and there you go. I mean, it's pretty easy. So if you didn't know how to get there, that, you know, I know sometimes the forums can be a little complicated for some people. MZ, I see your question about Camland. How I play Camland. We're actually going to talk about Camland because I think they made a change to Camland. Yeah, right here. Yeah, so we're going to talk about Camland a little bit, right? But if you want a specific breakdown about Camland a little bit more deeper, we do have an episode. I don't remember the episode number, but it's Clump Tanks. Clump Tanks is an episode we go over Camland quite a bit there. You can watch that episode. All right, so Arcane staff changes. All right, so they give you a description here. In general, time freeze was pretty annoying, right? And so they changed the immunity time freeze versus players 5 seconds to 11 seconds. So what does that mean? All right, so basically, if you get Great Arcaned, you can't get Great Arcaned again for 5 seconds, okay? That's what it used to be, all right? So if you got Great Arcaned for 5 seconds after that Great Arcane, you can't get Great Arcane again. Now they changed it to 11 seconds, okay? So basically, like, chain stunning with Great Arcane is a lot like, well, I wouldn't even say it's harder. It's just impossible now, right? Because you have 11 seconds in between them. I think that this is a good change because Great Arcane is OP, and that's the truth. Great Arcane is OP right now. It really is, okay? There's nothing that really breaks it once you get in that Great Arcane. It's just the mercenary shoes, right? That they make you jump out of it. Outside of that, if you get Great Arcane, you're fucked, right? If you're running Graveguard boots or anything that keeps you from being stunned, okay, then you won't be Great Arcane, okay? If you have anything that's like Graveguard boots specifically, right? You won't get, like, even if they drop a Great Arcane on top of you, you're not gonna get Great Arcane. But that's if you have it if you already have that buff on you. Okay, so it's very hard to time. It's not stable, right? You can't do that every time you see a Great Arcane coming in. Boom! I'm gonna pop my fucking Graveguard boots. Like, I mean, that's really hard. Okay, so in reality, Great Arcane is kind of OP, right? It really is. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago? I had a fight. I was fighting with Militant. We were fighting against, I want to say it was M3R. I can't remember who we were fighting against. And they were running like 5 or 6 Great Arcanes in their Zerg, and they were just stopping almost every single engage on our backline, right? It's really crazy. And that was actually after this patch, right? So Great Arcane is very OP. There's no reason not to be using them in your Zergs right now, in my opinion. It was K-mode. Okay, K-mode. Yeah, cool. So, all right, so anyway, yeah, so there's no reason not to run Great Arcanes, right? But 11 seconds, it's a good change. I like that change. It's gonna affect because people are gonna be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't play Great Arcane as much. But truthfully, even with 11 seconds, it's still OP, okay? I think unless this becomes more like 20 seconds, and even then, I still think that it's viable, right? I still think it's very viable, even with 20 seconds. So I don't know if this is the way to nerf the weapon, but I think that a lot of people are not taking advantage of this weapon right now. So anyway, that's it for Great Arcane. The next big change, and this is a really, really, really big change, right? This is the change to Locust, all right? This is a change to Locust. They reworked the cleanse logic inside the area, blah, 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 blah. All right, so what this is basically micro stuns, right? Or micro CC. Let's call it micro CC, right? Like tiny little stuns that, such as like Judicator Helmet stun, right? Technically it's a stun. And that Judicator Helmet stun, it's like a very, very small short-term stun, but it actually stops your character from walking, right? And that stopping the character from walking is actually really, really important because it makes them get to the clump slower. You know, it just makes them take longer time. All right. Those kinds of things, they're all gone now. As long as the locust is being used, those things don't work. They don't, like, they're instantly removed, right? Like it says instantly removed when applied. So they don't work. Like your character is going to continue walking even if he gets hit by a Judy helm. It's not going to matter. Your guy's going to keep walking. Okay. That's a huge change for Locust. I think Locust should have had it from the very beginning. But it's you know, I think it had to do something with the way they did their coding. Okay. And the reason I say that with the thing that devs did the coding is because exactly what MZ is saying right now in the chat, the current bug with Spiked and Locust might need to be addressed. Yeah. So exactly what MZ is saying, right? So that's why I think it had to do something with the coding, because when they made this change, and the majority of people know this, but if you guys don't know this, spread this information around, because it's even been acknowledged by SBI. From what I know, I was told that they know that they made an announcement. I didn't actually see the announcement though. But anyway, everybody knows about this, okay? And if you don't know, then, you know, tell your guild leaders and everything so that they can know. But Locust is essentially, it's broken right now. What it's doing, it's actually somehow it's breaking the damage from certain weapons. So I know people have tested them out, and it turns out that certain weapons, like MZ said, the spiked, right? So if you get hit by a spiked gauntlet while you are inside of a locust then you're not going to get any damage on you. Okay. If you get hit by the wailing bow, that's another one too. Is the wailing bow that was it the wailing bow? I'm pretty sure it was the wailing bow. I can't remember 100%, but I'm pretty sure it was the wailing bow as well. And then there was a couple others that were like, they weren't doing damage, but they were doing like pierces, things like that. Like I think it was the Spirit Hunter, stuff like that. Yeah, Zykeman says Wailing and SH. How's SH? I don't know what the hell is SH. Oh, Spirit Hunter. Yeah. So Spirit Hunter, like, it does the pierce and it does the damage afterwards, like the, you know, like if you stand on the pool that the Spirit Hunter does, like it's still doing tick damage to you, right? But the initial damage from the Spirit Hunter doesn't do any damage, and the Wailing doesn't do any damage. The Spike Gauntlet doesn't do any damage. All of these inside of the Locust, right? So no damage out of any of those. You can test it out yourself if you don't believe me. A lot of people have tested it. I've heard it from multiple different guilds. Multiple different people have tested these things. So yeah, those things are pretty important. If you didn't know about it, tell your leadership so that they're not running these weapons right now, because Locust just breaks them. All right. Now, with that being said, let's move on to the bows. Okay. Oh, by the way, obviously they said that, yes, they know about it, but it's obviously a problem and they're going to fix it. Okay. It's just a matter of when they fix it. Okay. So what I assume is that they're going to fix it in the next patch, which is probably going to last us for at least another week, maybe 2, maybe even 3 weeks. All right. So this change is going to affect for a couple weeks. It's not going to be gone overnight. All right. So talking about the Wailing Bow, right? We were just talking about how the Wailing Bow is broken inside of the Locust. It doesn't work. However, they made a big change to the Wailing Bow, and I think this is actually a meaningful change. The damage keeps increasing when multiple targets are hit at the same time. So basically, the Wailing Bow, if you don't understand how it works, the Wailing Bow shoots a big, like a very large arrow towards, the target, whatever, right? And every time it hits an enemy, it ticks up, right? So it does more damage to the next enemy. So I think it's after like 4 or 5 enemies. I think maybe 4. Yeah, I think it's like after 5 enemies, you're gonna do max damage with your Wailing Bow. So basically, the first 3 or 4 guys that get hit by Wailing Bow are not gonna take too much damage, but everybody after that is gonna take massive damage. The problem was that the way the work, like kind of like the coding happened was that if the enemy got hit around, like very close in time, or like as they say at the same time, right? Like they say right here at the same time, but it's not actually the exact same microsecond time. It's like, anyway, whatever. My point is that if people got hit at the same time, then it would only tick up once. So like, even though 3 people got hit at the same time, it would only tick up 1 time, right? So you would have to hit another person behind them in order to keep scaling it up. Now they fix that, and so what they're doing now is that even if multiple targets get hit at the same time, right? That's what it says right there. It's still going to tick up. This I can tell you for a fact that this is gonna be massive for Wailing Bow. Okay. Now, are people going to be running a ton of Wailing Bows? No, I don't think so. Okay. I think Wailing Bow as a weapon as a whole is a niche weapon. Okay. It occupies a very specific role. All right. It's not going to be a major role player in the entire Zerg. However, I can definitely see Wailing Bomb Squads coming back to the game. Okay, Wailing Bomb Squads used to be criminal, right? Like they used to be absolutely killer. Not just in closed environments like castles and territories, but also open world. Okay, and the way fights are today, where a lot of the enemy Zerg just kind of runs into you, okay, and does like a flooding style, which by the way, that's going to be the next episode next week. It's tsunami tactics. It's the flood style, right? So the fact that enemies just run into you, it makes it so easy to stack that Wailing Bow all the way up. Okay, so what I'm saying is that in general, Wailing Bow is actually going to be very powerful. I wouldn't be surprised if I see multiple bomb squads running Wailing Bow in the coming months. Okay, and I say coming months because it always takes a little bit for these changes to kind of hit the meta. Okay, but if you're kind of thinking like, oh yeah, you're a bomb squad player and you're kind of thinking like, what's the next cool bomb squad thing to do? It's Wailing Bow, especially because right now the meta is running a lot of demon armors. Okay, a lot of demon armors. Everybody in like every Zerg that knows what they're doing is running quite a bit of demon armors. Personally, I don't think you don't need that many demon armors. I do think you need some, right? So if your Zerg is not running any demon armors, you're also wrong, right? You got to run some demon armors. But right now the meta is like massive amounts of demon armors. Okay, so Wailing Bow is a perfect counter to that, right? Because if I remember correctly, unless I'm speaking out of my ass, or unless they've changed it, and I haven't actually looked at Wailing Bow in a very long time, so maybe I'm wrong. But Wailing Bow is unreflectable, right? Someone in the chat can confirm with me. If you guys are in the game, you guys can check real quick. From what I remember, it's not reflectable. So basically, it's a perfect counter against enemies running demon armors, especially because right now, Siege Bow bomb squads are a big thing. And they're getting reflected left and right, right? Now, Siege Bow Bomb Squad, I still think is very powerful. Obviously, it's very powerful. But Wailing Bomb Squad is also going to be a major, major player, in my opinion. Obviously, after they fix this whole Locust thing. All right. The next up, we got daggers. They did something to the W, Shane Slash. It's not a big deal. Not for ZvZ. It's a big deal for like smaller scale stuff, but it's not a big deal for ZvZ. Bridal Fury. I'm torn on Bridal Fury. They reduced its resilience penetration, so this is a big hit, and they reduced the damage quite a bit. Yeah, this is like 20% damage reduction, but they fixed the AoE escalation, which is great. But between this percentage damage reduction and the resilience penetration reduction, yeah, I don't know if it's gonna be a big thing. I think people should try it out. I think people should test it out, see how it works. I think it could be pretty good as like a regular DPS, but not something like a major bomb squad player, nothing like that. It's more like regular DPS because it can come in, do big damage, and come out quickly, right? So it's a pretty safe bet in terms of DPS, but you do have to be hitting good clumps in order to get good damage. Otherwise, it's pretty useless. What I calculated is that you need to hit at least 4 people in order to get the same amount of damage that Bridal Fury used to give you. Now, if you hit more than 4 people, so you hit 5 or more people, then you start getting extra damage on the enemy that wasn't there before. So if you liked that damage that Bridal Fury used to give on the enemy, then yeah, I mean, if you hit a big clump, it's even more damage, right? If you didn't like the damage that Bridal Fury used to give, then you're probably not going to like it now either, because it's not a huge change. If you're wondering, I calculated it was like 20% more damage at full escalation. 20% more damage than Bridal Fury used to do without the escalation working. All right, so yeah, I think Bridal is an option, but it's definitely not anything that's like critical must use or anything like that. I don't think it's going to be a big meta change. Demon Fang got nerfed again. right? Resilience penetration dropped from 50 to 40%. Yeah, Demon Fang is shit now. Like, that's just the way it is. It's a dead weapon. Put it in the coffin, make a hole, drop it in there. It's gone. All right. The only reason I would see Demon Fangs playing is if I see a Demon Fang player running a Stalker Jacket, because Demon Fang works really well with Stalker Jacket because of the high mobility and the fact that your E is quick and all those things, right? So Demon Fang Stalker Jacket is the only way I can see Demon Fang working, but Stalker Jackets don't stack anymore, so therefore I don't see the purpose of having more than like at most one Demon Fang per party, and that's like an absolute most, right? But yeah, I mean, I told you guys this. I said this like 3-4 months ago, right? I said Demon Fang is gonna go away. I said this. So if you weren't preparing for this, that's your choices. Now you gotta look elsewhere. All right, Fire Staffs. Burning Field. Burning Field is the AoE Q on Fire Staff. The initial hit went up. I think this is actually a pretty good change. Don't get me wrong. I personally still think that the single target Q for Fire Staff is incredibly powerful, and there's no reason to run anything other than that. However, when I say there's no reason, there is actually a reason. The way I would say is if you're fighting a castle, I wouldn't say go for, or even territory, right? Enclosed spaces fights. I wouldn't say do the single target. I would say do Burning Field, because this initial damage buff is actually pretty decent. Okay. Again, at the end of the day, we're talking about a Q here, right? We're not talking about like a massive change that's gonna like change the whole game. No. I mean, it's a Q, right? It's a Q, but for being a Q, this is a pretty good change. So I do expect this Q to be used a little bit more. It's gonna be good. Flame Blast, move speed, it doesn't matter. This is more for like smaller scale stuff. It doesn't matter for ZvZ. Life Touch doesn't matter. Okay, Maces, Camland. We were talking about Camland a little earlier. Camland, I know a lot of people are getting hyped up, especially people that used to love Camland, are getting hyped up. They're like, oh my god, Camland is coming back. Yeah, Camland's amazing. It's great. Woohoo! You know? Here's the thing. These changes don't mean anything. Okay? Like, that's the truth. And I'm sorry if it bursts your bubble, right? But it's the truth. These changes don't matter that much. Now, this 3-meter radius, so projectile range increased from 18 meters to 21 meters. That is actually a decent change. Okay? I actually like that. In fact, I think it should have always been 21 meters. But this is a pretty big change for Camland. However, it doesn't change anything in the terms of the meta. And I'll explain why in a second. Now, the second thing that they changed is the projectile speed. It goes from 19.23 meters per second to 23.07 meters per second. What is that? That's like for like 20% speed faster, right? But it's going, like 8% distance. Anyway, it goes a little faster and it goes a little farther, which I think is nice. It's nice for the Camland, but it has nothing to do with changing the meta or changing anything. Here's the thing. I have said continually, Camland is still good. I've said this forever, right? Camland is still good. The thing about Camland is that it doesn't fit in the current meta. The current meta is majority, well, I say the current meta, it's not true anymore. I'll talk about that a little bit. But the meta that we had was primarily heavy melee DPS, right? When you have primarily heavy melee DPS, there's no reason to run Camland. That's a ranged clumper, okay? That's why Camland was a big deal before, like 2 years ago, was because all the Zergs were ranged DPS, so it made sense, right? You were shooting over walls, you were constantly looking to defend yourself with rivers and chokes and whatever, right? You were looking to shoot over walls, so Camland made sense. Nowadays, it's the opposite. Nowadays, you have a bunch of people running melee DPS, so there's no reason for you to run a Camland if you're running melee DPS, because you're better off running a melee clumper, okay? It just makes better sense. Now, here's the thing. The meta is changing. Okay, the meta is changing right now. If you didn't think so, then you've been living under a rock at this point. All right, I've been saying that by the end of last season, the heavy burst melee DPS meta was gonna be dead, and it's pretty much dead, right? Like the truth is there's still a lot, and this is what I said before too, is that it's gonna be dead in the sense that the idea is gonna be dead and fading away, but it doesn't mean that it's gonna be gone. Okay, there's a big difference. In order for that meta to change, it takes time for people to adopt other weapons and other styles. Okay, it takes a long time. Okay, this melee DPS meta, this melee burst DPS meta had been around for the better part of a little over a year, to be honest. And so in order to get rid of it, it's going to take people a long time because Zergs need to adjust, right? Individual players have to adjust their play style, right? If you were a melee DPS player, now you're becoming a ranged DPS player. That's going to take you some time to adjust. The callers have to adjust their calling styles. And this is going to be one of the things that we're going to get to see what callers are actually a higher level caller and which ones are not. The ones that are able to adapt to changing metas are going to be the ones that are actually going to be able to call themselves like high level callers, right? So we'll see. This is kind of like a trial by fire for callers across the entire game. So what we're seeing here is that the meta is shifting, and I think I don't have any direct predictions as to where the meta is going to end up, but any direct predictions. But what I can say is that I know for a fact that the meta is not going to be heavy melee burst DPS. Okay, now it may still be melee burst, but it might be coupled with something else like some ranged, or it may be coupled with something else like some bruiser, right? Those are the things that are going to kind of go into it, and we'll see how that ends up. But as it is right now, there's just no way we're going back to what we were. Now, with that being said, okay, Camlan might actually be making a re-entry into the meta. So if you're somebody that's kind of looking at like, oh, well, I'm thinking of being a clump tank. Okay, if you're thinking about being a clump tank right now, don't become a melee clumper. What you should first try to be is Camlan player. The reason is because I think Camlan is going to become a part of the ZvZ meta again, just not, I don't know if it's going to be a huge part like it used to be, or a small part, like one every 2 parties or something like that, right? But I can tell you for a fact that Camlan is going to be part of the meta, but that's not because of this change. Okay, that's not because of this change. Don't lie to yourself. And if anyone ever tells you that this change is what made Camlan meta, just put it in your head that they have no idea what the hell they're talking about when it comes to metas. Okay, so the Camlan change is happening. The Camlan adoption is happening again because of the changing meta. All right. And by the way, in general, I love Camlan. I think it's a really nice weapon. It's very good, and it gives a lot of different options. All right, Iron Root Staff, not a big deal, doesn't matter. Spears, so this is a big change for Spears. The Forest of Spears is the W that the Spears have, and this is where a lot of the damage of Spirit Hunter comes from. And Spirit Hunter does very good damage, and a lot of that very good damage comes from Forest of Spears, their W, okay? If you don't know which one it is, Forest of Spears is the one that they're like poking nonstop. They just keep poking the enemy, right? And it's like throwing a bunch of like mini spears at them or something in like a cone in front of them, whatever. All right, it's kind of funny animation. But anyway, Forest of Spears. It changed in ticks. So it used to tick 8 times, right? So you would pop it, it would hit 1, 2, 3, all the way to 8, right? Now it's only going to tick 6 times, okay? That is a huge change, okay? That's 25% reduction in the amount of hits, but also in the amount of channel duration, right? Like this even says right here, this reduces the max channel duration by 0.6 seconds. That's huge. Okay, that's absolutely huge. The reason it's huge is because we always think of Spirit Hunters with their W as doing quite a good amount of damage, right? Not a shitload, but doing good damage. And the truth is that 9 times out of 10, Spirit Hunter's Forest of Spears is canceled before the seventh tick ever hits, right? They usually drop 5 hits, sometimes 6, and then they stop the channel because they gotta back up, because otherwise they're gonna get countered and killed. This means that the damage is actually staying the same. They didn't just remove the ticks, they increased the damage per tick. So now the total damage, it's gonna stay the same, but it's gonna land much faster, 25% faster. And it used to be that, again, 25% of that total damage didn't ever land. Now, most of the time it's gonna land. So I'll tell you guys the truth. I know a lot of people are going away from Spirit Hunter, and this idea that Spirit Hunter is not that good has been kind of increasing over time, and you see less and less Spirit Hunters on the field. I'm telling you, this change on its own is gonna bring back Spirit Hunters. Okay, it's massive. It's absolutely massive, and we'll see how long it takes for people to pick it up, right? I'm not saying that the entire Zerg is gonna run fucking Spirit Hunters. No, at the end of the day, Spirit Hunters is a piercer weapon, right? So that's what you use it for. But what I'm saying is that instead of running other piercing weapons, you're gonna be seeing people coming back to the Spirit Hunter. Now, there's another reason people are gonna come back to the Spirit Hunter, okay? And it's not this, but rather this down here, where Carving Sword is actually getting a resistance reduction, okay? The resistance, so Carving Sword reduces the enemy resistance, right? So it's a pierce, and it's actually going to be reduced. So they actually reduced it a little bit here. What is this, like for, I guess, what, 20%? 20%? I don't know. My numbers are kind of messed up right now, but whatever, right? It doesn't seem like a big deal, honestly. It really doesn't seem like a big deal, but I promise you it's a big enough deal. And the reason is because Carving Sword itself is not very good as a weapon. Okay, and I know a lot of you guys are like, what do you mean? I love Carving Sword. Listen, it's not a personal attack. It's just the truth. Okay, Carving Sword is not very good. You have to stack it up, right? So you have to expose yourself to the enemy constantly to stack it up, right? And then on top of it, you have to make sure you have the stacks perfectly so that you can hit the enemy with your actual E, right? Now, when you do hit the enemy, you have to slash through the enemy, which means that you're exposing yourself, because usually you're going to slash into the enemy, and now you're in the enemy's back line and you got to walk out of there. So you're exposing yourself. You might end up dying in their back line, right? Whereas Spirit Hunter, you don't have to do any of that, right? You just drop that motherfucker, and then you use your force of spears and you walk out of there, right? So Carving Sword as a whole is not a very good weapon. The reason it was being picked up so much was because, well, simply put, the pierce from the carving was the best, right? By far. But this reduction is not a huge reduction, but it's a reduction enough where now it makes people think, well, do I really want a Carving Sword in my Zerg? Probably not, because spears now look much more, they look much more viable, right? More damage. Yeah, sure, I don't have as much, resistance reduction as Carving, but this is more reliable and it has better damage. So I think most people are going to switch into Spirit Hunters. So the next one up, we're almost done. The next one up is going to be the War Gloves. The War Gloves create an opening, a little bit more range. Not a big deal. Earth Crusher. This is the Raven Strike Cestus. The Raven Strike slow. The self slow. So if you don't know, when you drop your Raven Strike E, you get slowed by 50%. Now that is actually a slow for 25%. And they also increased a little bit of the damage. This is like 5% damage increase, something like that. So the damage itself is not a big deal. I mean, 5%, yeah, I guess I'll take it, but it's not a big deal. This move speed change, it seems like it's important, but it's really not that big a deal. I'm sure some people are going to try it out, and we will see some Raven Strike bomb squads coming up in the next few weeks to the next few months. I'm sure. Just be on the lookout for it. But I don't think it's going to stick around. I don't think they're going to be that big a deal. But I'd be happy to be proven wrong. If you guys think that this is going to be great, go ahead and try it out. Go ahead and get some kills. But I just don't think it's 5%. If they had made it 10%, I would be looking at it a little bit more. If they had made it 15% more damage, I would 100% be telling you guys this is fucking meta, right? But 5%, it's just not enough. All right. The next one is Spike Gauntlet. They reduced the resilience penetration as well as the Raven Strike. They reduced both of them from 60 to 50. This is a trend, by the way. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the majority of weapons that used to have higher resilience penetration are now being brought down to 50% or lower, right? Like Demon Fang, we saw it drop down to 40. So if you see, the majority of weapons in the entire game are dropping down to 50% resilience penetration. This means what? This means that SBI is looking at focus fire protection as becoming a bigger part of protecting the players from getting clumped and dumped, right? So I think what SBI is trying to do is they're trying to limit the amount of clump and dump we have in the game, okay? Which, if that is true, again, I'm just hypothesizing, right? I have no idea. I have no connections. I'm just hypothesizing it. This is just what I think. If they actually continue to go down this path, then I think what we're going to start to see is a lot more dot weapons, such as like halberds and that kind of stuff, which also coincides with the last update they did, where they up the Q damage on the axis, right? So we'll see where this ends up, but essentially they don't want to see so much clump and dump as we are seeing. This is what this is showing. Now let me drink some water here real quick. All right, gotta stay hydrated, man. All right, Mistwalker shoes. I know some people have been using these in ZvZ. They're okay, I guess. They're niche. They're niche. There's always gonna be players that are gonna find little things like these shoes that are gonna help them out and do great. And that's good. That's good. I mean, but the truth is that the majority of players are not gonna run this, so it's not gonna be part of the meta. This is gonna be like a niche type thing. Hold on, I got a cough. Give me a second. Yeah, see, that's why I had to drink water. Gotta stay hydrated, homie. Yo, Starlord, what's up? Lottie, what's going on, man? So, yeah, so it's not gonna be a major thing. I'm not saying it's bad shoes. I'm not saying. I've seen some people do really good plays with the Mistwalker shoes. But in general, it's not gonna be that big a deal. All right, this is one of the things I did want to talk about and hit on for sure. Brazilian cape. It's niche. It's niche. That's the best I can say. Okay, it's niche. I don't know too much about it right now. That's the truth. And it's because the first time I read it, it just didn't really attract me too much. It just didn't seem like something that could be very viable in many situations. So I don't care about Brazilian. However, Bridgewatch cape. This change right here, slow strength 20 to 40%. I'm gonna tell you guys right now. Flat out, this should be absolutely, completely, 100% required for every melee clump tank. Okay, like that's absolute. Like that's it. Like, if you think that my opinion matters for whatever reason, then I really think that you should go to your guild leader right now. Go to your Zerg leaders. Go to whoever handles your Zerg's kind of like kits, and let them know that Bridgewatch cape is a required thing for melee clump tanks. Okay, outside of that, no one needs it. No one needs it. Okay, I can see it being used for like some melee DPS and stuff like that, I guess, but it's not a big deal. Okay, but melee clump tanks, absolutely. This is a must have. Okay, the reason is because here's the thing: Martlock cape is extremely important. Okay. Martlock cape is extremely important. However, Martlock cape is not as important for clump tanks as it is for disengaged tanks. Okay, because a clump tank can go in and clump, and a good clump tank will be out of the harm's way before the enemy counter engages. Okay, that's a good clump tank. All right, which means what? That out of all the tanks, they are the ones that require the Martlock cape the least. Okay, now don't get me wrong. If a clump tank wants to continue running Martlock cape, I have no problem with that, because the truth is that Martlock cape is just great, right? It's just a really, really good cape. Okay, however, this 40% slow strength, just think about this. Okay, Icicle is 50% slow strength. Okay, a Mistwalker, no, what is it? No, Duskweaver. A Duskweaver armor is like 35%. Okay, so this is more than a Duskweaver and just a little less than a Icicle slow, but you have it on your cape, and it procs when you proc your E. I'll show you guys. This is when they brought it in on May 8th. 1 month ago, right? A little bit over a month ago. This is when they brought it in. Let me find it here. This is when they brought it in. All right. So when they brought it in, it activates when you cast your E slot ability. This actually, they brought it in before this. Okay. But this is when they actually like changed it and made it like, made it good. Right. All right. So it activates when you cast your E. All right. So that's perfect because your E is usually going to be the stunner, right? Like if you're one-handed mace, your E is gonna stun, so you're gonna be right on top of the enemy. All right. If you're a what's called a Hodge, a Hand of Justice, you're gonna use your E to clump the enemy, right? So it's perfect. You're gonna be in the center of the whole thing. All right. So it activates, and then what happens? It creates a 5-meter sandstorm. Now, 5 meters is a good amount. If it had been 6 meters, I would say it's OP. All right, but it's 5 meters. It's not huge, but it's good enough for this. Okay. And it's around the caster, so it's gonna be directly around you. It's not like placed on an enemy and that's it. Like, it's around you, so you can actually walk around with it for 6 seconds. This is a lot. Okay, like you can say, oh well, yeah, but the cooldown is so long. Yeah, it doesn't matter though. Like, if you actually have the Bridge Watch cape up and you get a clump for 6 seconds, that clump is gonna be slowed. That's incredible, right? Now, when it came out a month ago, it was 20% slow. I don't know if I made a comment about it or not back then, but if I did, my comment would have been, well, it's shit, don't even look at it, right? Like, that's the truth. It's shit, don't even look at it. However, this was interesting here. It reduced the crowd control resistances, okay? What does that mean? That means that your stuns, roots, and slows, yours and your allies, were going to be a little bit better. Now, 0.2 is not a big deal. If you don't know what 0.2 is, go play around with the numbers in the game. Just know that it's not a huge deal, but it's something, right? It's nice. It's nice. That's all I can say. It's just nice, right? But essentially, 0.2, right? Okay. 0.2 on resistances. Okay, that's pretty good. Crowd control resistances. Okay, that's pretty good. 20%, I was like, okay, not even worth it. Don't look at it. Okay. However, they just made this update. Now they made it into 40%, and it still has the crowd control resistances, right? So now it's 40% with the crowd control resistances. This shit's fucking huge. Okay, it's absolutely huge. All right, like, if you have a bunch of Bridge Watch capes in your chest for some reason, you're about to make a lot of money. All right, like, that's the truth, man. This is huge for melee clump tanks. Now, why do I say that? Why do I say melee clump tanks? Well, because for Camland players, it's not a big, like, it doesn't make sense, right? If you're a Camland player and you throw your fucking E out of the distance, okay, congratulations, you have a 40% slow that's around you, but you're nowhere near the enemy. It's useless, right? So that's what I'm talking about. It's for melee clump tanks. This is insane. This is very, very, very powerful. All right. Lolly says, if I'm not mistaken, Bridgewatch cape used to pop when you auto attack. Yeah, that's a big change. Yeah, it used to attack. So it used to be a little circle. I think it was like 3-meter radius, something like that. And it used to be you auto attack somebody, and it does the little slow on top of the enemy, right? And then if the enemy walked out of it, then it just stayed there. It didn't follow him around, right? Now it follows you around. It's 5-meter radius. The slow is 40%. It reduces crowd control resistances, and it's procced by the E as opposed to an auto attack. This is it's meta. Just know it's meta. Even though it's not meta yet, it's meta. All right, let's just put it down. It's meta. All right, so there's nothing else here. I know we took a while, but there were some pretty important changes here that we had to go over. So now I'm gonna put the videos here. These are the ZvZ videos as usual from the last week or so. I can't make it full screen. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's YouTube. YouTube has had this problem for a while now. So yeah, I haven't found a workaround. If you guys know how to fix this, basically look like when I try to like make it full screen, it's actually not gonna allow me to be looking at my stuff. Anyway, whatever. I don't need to explain it because it's a mess. So if you guys know how to fix this and basically how to keep YouTube videos running while I tab out of YouTube, then let me know. That'd be great. But I haven't found a fix. So anyway, now we're getting into the episode today. And I know we took a very long time with those changes, but I think a lot of them were very important to go over. And also today's episode is not going to be very long. It's pretty straightforward, but it is very, very thought-provoking, right? Today's episode is all about you figuring out your own positioning and your own movement. All right, so episode 27, movement and positioning. Here we go. Again, any questions, comments, concerns, drop them in the chat. I am reading. So first we're going to talk about movement. All right, then we're going to talk about positioning. And now that might confuse you and you'll be like, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean? Movement and positioning is the same thing? No, it's not. It's not. It absolutely is not. And I'm gonna explain why. Okay. Now, the next thing we're gonna talk about is situational awareness, and then we're gonna talk about I'm gonna give you guys a little example with like a territory, right? Like if you're in a territory, where should you stand? Okay. Then I'm gonna talk about the myth of positioning. Okay. There's this myth of positioning where it's basically a diagram, right? That shows you where the tanks should stand and where the DPS should stand and what the death lane is and what the where the supports should be and where the enemy is. Okay, I know you've all seen that diagram, right? Everybody has one of them in their own guild. That diagram is a myth. Okay, it's in my opinion almost completely useless, other than just a nice little visual. All right, and I'll explain why. And then I'm gonna give you guys an open world example. So just like I gave you, I'm gonna give you guys a territory example. I'm gonna give you guys an open world example. And then at the very end, we're just gonna give a little conclusion, right? Just kind of like, what we can take from this, just the couple, 3-4 little things that we can kind of look at and kind of understand with these things. All right. So stay with me here. There's gonna be some stuff that is gonna be very, very, very basic. Okay, but I promise you guys, we're gonna get to some really high level shit very quickly. And if you don't get your mind ready for it, it's gonna kind of go over your head. All right. So first, let's talk about movement, and then we'll talk about positioning. So, what is movement? All right. So what actually is movement? Movement is anytime your character moves from point A to point B. All right. Whether you walk, you blink, you sprint, you get knocked back over there, whatever the hell. Right. Where your character moves from one location to another, that is movement. Okay. Very simple. All right. Well, what's the purpose of movement? Right? Why do we want to move? Okay. Why are we moving? And when we ask that question of why are we moving, well, how fast do we need to move? And beyond that is where do we need to move, right? So those are 3 things. It's like, well, why am I moving? How fast do I need to move? And where do I move? Okay, those are very, very important questions. So why move? Okay, well, you might be moving because the enemy engaged. You might be moving because you engaged. You might be moving because you're pushing, you're kiting, you're getting a better angle, you're scouting, right? Okay. Now, how fast do you need to move? Well, do you need to pop a sprint? Do you need to use a cartwheel if you're like a Grail Seeker or something? You have a cartwheel, right? Or is walking to your destination, is that okay, right? Sometimes I know some people are like, oh my God, I need to get over there. I'm gonna pop a sprint. It's like, why? You don't actually need to pop a sprint right now, right? But they never ask themselves this question, so they just pop the sprint anyway because they're like, oh, I should be over there and I'm standing over here. I should get there very quickly. It's like, no. Why are you popping your sprint, right? Don't waste your sprint for no reason, okay? On the opposite side, there's so many times that people are like, yeah, I should be over there and I'm over here, so I'm just gonna walk over there. And then you take forever to get there. And it's like, by the time you get there, you're too late. You're too late. So how fast is very important, okay? Now, where should you move? And this is the major question that everybody has, right? It's where should you move? Well, if the enemy's engaging, should you move away from the engage, right? And I'm sure you guys have heard that. I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard that a million times. It's like, well, when the enemy engages, you back up and you spread out, right? And it's like, oh, wow, thank you. You're such a wise man. Fuck that. You ain't wise. That was such a lazy fucking answer. That's the truth. That's the truth. What the hell do you mean the enemy's engaging, you walk away? Bullshit. Bullshit. You got to find angles, right? Sometimes you got to back up away from the enemy. Sometimes you just cut to the other side. Sometimes you got to walk into the enemy when they're engaging you. Why? Because it might be safer inside their Zerg than where you're standing. Okay? All these questions are very important. So where to move? It's like, well, spread out. What the fuck does that mean? Right? Should you go towards the enemy's flanks? Towards the enemy front line? Towards your back line? Right? These are all questions. Where should I move? Now, here's the thing. Positioning, right? All of these things were movement. Now, positioning is actually the answer to all of this. Okay? So, positioning is the place your character is standing in when he should be standing there. All right? So, movement is when you go from A to B. Positioning is where you should be. All right? So, what is the goal of positioning? Well, the goal of positioning is the place you will be most effective in the field. All right? Now, you can say, well, that's very broad. Yeah, it's very broad, and we're going to break it down. But generally speaking, The positioning is the goal of positioning. The best possible positioning is where you will be the most effective on the field. Now, how do you figure out where you're going to be the most effective on the field? And that's what this episode is really about, right? It ain't about movement and positioning, even though that's what it's titled, right? It's about figuring out where I will be the most effective on the field. And that is dependent on the situation, because every situation is different, right? So you need to figure out your situation in order to figure out where you should be positioned. So if you don't figure out your situation first, then you won't be able to figure out where you should be standing. And because you don't figure out where you should be standing, you're going to be walking around doing a whole lot of movement and very little positioning. All right? So let's look at some situational awareness. All right? Because that's what we need. That's what we need in order to achieve the goal of positioning, right? We need to read the terrain. All right? What kind of terrain is surrounding you? Do you have walls like the ZvZ we're watching right now, right? There's a territory fight, okay? And I'm not even watching too much, but what is happening there? There's a territory fight. They got walls on their west side. They got walls to the south, right? They got the enemy to the far west, right? It looks like, I think. Yeah, it is. All right. So where should you be standing here, right? Where is it? Okay, well, we know where it's safe, right? Look at this Grove Keeper. We're watching a Grove Keeper playing right now. He's going in with his E, and what did he hit? Absolutely fuck all, right? And he goes and uses Adjudicator. Why? For no reason. Look, I'm gonna rewind it and I'm gonna show you guys. I can because I'm talking about it. I can make it a little bigger for now, right? So here, right? What's he doing? He's going west. Okay, great. Now his whole Zerg looks like they're engaging over there on the northwest. And what is he doing? He's down here on the south doing nothing, right? There's no enemies down here. He's on the clear. And what is he doing? He walks west. Okay, great. Fine. I understand. The enemy might counter engage, right? Okay. So now he comes in, and now, like, why is he dropping an E right here right now? Like, there's nothing happening right here. Boom, he drops an E. Oh my God, I was so fucking useful, guys. No, you weren't. You were useless, right? You wasted your E. And I think the major part is because his fucking positioning is garbage, right? Had he been standing over here in this area or over there in the northeast, right? Well, what would happen is that he would be ready to see if the enemy walks southeast, and then he goes and stops them. But because he's just moving, he's not thinking of positioning. This is the crap he does. And then he goes and wastes the Judy helmet as well. For what? What are you Judy helming? Your Zerg is fine. You see the Zerg on the east? His Zerg is on the east, and they're safe. The enemy didn't counter engage. He's safe. So if your Zerg is safe, then why are you wasting CC? No reason. And now you walk all the way back to your back line. For what? Right? And these are the questions that nobody asks themselves. Okay, so situational awareness is very, very important because you got to read the terrain, what's surrounding you, what walls, the open ground, the chokes, right? But beyond that, and by the way, if you don't know, we have an episode literally titled using the terrain or reading the terrain, something like that. All right, it's like episode 24, 25, 23, something like that. Anyway, whatever. All right. And that episode, if you want, like, I made a whole episode on reading the terrain because it's that important. Okay. So, if you want to know more about that, there's that episode. Make sure you guys watch it. It's very, 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 very useful. All right. Now, the next thing you also got to read, and I kind of talked about this right now, right? Just in this little 10-second review of this fight, is that you got to read the enemy, right? Is the enemy pushing you? Is the enemy, falling back? Do they have cooldowns? What are they doing? What is their posture? Are their DPS backing up or are they walking forward? Sometimes their front line doesn't do anything, but if their front line stays the same place and their back line starts to walk into you, then what does that tell you? Well, obviously, they're getting ready for a full engage, right? So if you're not in a position to be able to see that, then you're not in a position to be able to react to it, right? Now, you might be a DPS, so you might not need to be able to react to it because you're a DPS, you're standing in the back, right? And you need to have your caller, your D tanks, shout that out, right? But if you're a D tank, then hell yeah, you need to be up there. You need to be able to see these things, okay? So now, On top of reading the terrain and on top of reading the enemy, another thing you need to do is you need to read your own Zerg. And I've actually talked about this many times before, right? Reading your Zerg is extremely important because your caller, if your caller is at least a decent caller, okay? If your caller is at least a decent caller, your caller is not going to call counter engage when your Zerg is like half HP, okay? Like, and barely able to like stabilize. Okay, because nobody's actually going to hit anything and you're not going to kill anything unless you have an extremely well-disciplined Zerg like Escalation. All right, nobody's going to actually hit anything. Okay, so if you look at your Zerg and your Zerg is really low HP, then you know you're probably not going to get an engage in right now, right? So then you can kind of back up, you can kind of slow down, you can kind of relax. Okay, but if you see that your Zerg is full HP and the enemy just engaged, right? You're reading the enemy. And then you see that the enemy's inside of a choke because they tried to engage through a choke. And they're caught in a choke. You're reading the terrain, right? And then you look at your Zerg and your Zerg took almost no damage. Now you're reading the Zerg. Then guess what? You're going to fucking engage. Your caller would be an idiot not to call a counter engage in that situation, right? But you see how we don't talk about the situation until after we have read the terrain, after we have read the enemy, after we have read our own Zerg, right? Now, there's a fourth piece to this, to situational awareness. Starlord says, in the tank's defense, maybe he was lagging. That's always my excuse. Bullshit, he wasn't lagging. That motherfucker, that video was clear. That video was clear. I 100% blame that fucking tank. I don't even know who he is. What are we watching? I don't even know what guild we're watching. That looks like the escalation. That looks like the escalation. Oh, no. It's different. It's different. It's not escalation. I don't know who they are. I think this is from E-Server, to be honest. Oh, it says right there, ADHD versus F4. Anyway, yeah, I full blame I full blame that Grovekeeper. Anyway, all right, so the fourth thing that we got to look at with situational awareness is we got to read the map. Okay, and I've talked about this before as well. Reading the map is extremely important because when you look, is the enemy pushing you or you are pushing the enemy? That means that the fight as a whole, the whole fight is moving somewhere. Now, is that fight moving towards a choke? Is it moving towards open ground? Is it moving towards a hill, elevation changes, that kind of stuff, right? Where is the fight actually moving to? Okay? And that's important because if you're pushing the enemy and the enemy's getting walked into a choke, then that means that if you hit the enemy on that choke, they're fucked, right? They're wrecked. You're gonna destroy them. But if you don't look at the map, what's gonna happen is you're gonna use your E way too early, and then now you don't have your E up when they cross that choke, and so they get to walk across that choke for free, right? Or if you're a healer, right, and you see that the enemy's getting pushed back into a choke, then you should try really hard to keep your front line topped off as opposed to your back line. Why? Because your front line is gonna go and try to catch them on the choke first, so they're gonna be the ones that are gonna take the most damage in that scenario. Even if your backline is 30% HP, put the fucking heals forward. Because if you keep that train going, the enemy's going to be screwed, right? It works for every single role. But again, it all comes down to those four things that define the situation, which in turn defines what your positioning should be, right? Read the terrain, read the enemy, read your own Zerg, and then read the map, right? Those four things are extremely critical to understanding where you should be standing. All right. So situations define your positioning, and your movement is your response to understanding the situation. All right. And also, don't make blank statements in your head. Okay. This is one of the biggest things that I tell you guys all the time. Don't make blank statements in your head. What I mean by this is, okay, if the enemy is backing up, then that means I need to push harder, right? That's stupid because you don't know anything else. Yeah, they might be backing up, but they might actually be baiting you, right? You might be backing up, but they might actually be running a kite comp, right? Where they're constantly going to keep backing up and they're going to turn on the first 2-3 guys they see every time, and you're going to get caught out every time, right? So don't make blank statements. Just understand the whole situation and then know your positioning after that. All right, so let's go through a little bit, right? We're going to do a little bit of an exercise here with a territory, all right? With a territory example, all right? We're going to look at different roles and whether you're attacking, whether you're defending, whether you're defending, whether you're attacking, and different roles and what you should do, right? And you can say, oh, well, you're telling me what I should do. No, I'm not. You're going to see. You're going to see this is actually very open-ended, okay? Because it is you individually that needs to figure out the situation. All right, so let's start it off. If you're defending a territory, I don't care what territory, if you're defending a territory, you got to look at certain situations. If you're a range DPS, okay, then look at the walls, right? Look at the walls. Are the walls viable? Are the walls a viable defensive point where you can use to kind of stop the enemy from, or actually hit the enemy, okay? Now, what do I mean by that? All right, what do I mean by like the walls are viable? What the fuck does that mean? All right, so if you look at the situation, just because you're holding a territory does not mean that your caller is not going to call to full push on the enemy. Okay, let me give you guys a situation. If you're on a territory, the farm type territory, all right, and you're defending on the west side for whatever reason, and the enemy is outside that west side and they're pushing you in, well, you might think I should be on the west tower by the west mage. Well, that's pretty stupid, because when you're on that west tower and the west mage, they can hit you from northwest, they can hit you from southwest, and they can hit you from southeast, because the only place where your Zerg can cover is the northeast. Okay, all right, so you know, I actually think it would be better if I give you guys actually an actual diagram. See, this is the shit that happens. That's why you guys can't see the video. Well, hold on, let me see. I'm gonna do this, and then let me see. I'm trying to see if I can get like a black screen. No, not good. Oh, there it is. There it is. All right, this is good. This is great. This is great. All right, let me change it up. All right, there we go. All right, so I'm gonna give you guys a little diagram, right? So, you know, I'm not a fucking artist, but it is what it is. So let's say this here is the wall, the west wall of the territory, right? And then you have the center mages here in the center. This here is the choke, right? The choke that you guys are gonna be fighting on, and let's say your guys are all kind of standing right here and down here, right? Okay, great. And then the enemy is like down here. All right, that's fine. Okay, so cool. There it is. There's a farm territory fight. Okay, great, no problems. Let me see. Let me extend this wall all the way up there. Whatever. All right. Oh, and there's this wall like that. Whatever. All right, you guys get it, right? This is where the fucking mage is. Okay, that's where the mage is. Okay, so what you can say is, okay, well, let's go. I can't do black. The background is black. Let's do white. All right. So let's say you're gonna go and be like, okay, well, I'm gonna range DPS. I should stand over here so that way I can fucking flank them. Look, I'm so cool. I'm so great. I can flank the enemy. I'm amazing. I'm a great range DPS. Well, bullshit. Because if you're standing here, guess what? The enemy can actually come from here and bomb you over this wall. They're also down here, so they can bomb you over this wall. They can also stay back here and bomb you over here. Now, who the hell is gonna do this? Not really a lot of people, right? But I say it because I've seen it happen, okay? So, yeah, you have more angles that you get attacked in. And guess what? You're not gonna have any of your allies defending these two angles. You're not gonna have D-tanks or anything doing that. So you can say, oh, well, I like that wall, so, you know, I have a good angle. Yeah, but you gotta look at the whole picture, right? Remember, analyze the Zerg, analyze your Zerg, the enemy Zerg, your Zerg, the situation and the map, right? Right here, the map doesn't matter too much, but the situation does matter. The terrain, okay? So if you're not gonna do that, then okay, all right. So then what should you do? In this situation, okay, well then you can say, well, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna actually stand over here, right? I'm gonna stand over here by this wall. Well, is that a good situation as well? You don't know what's going on, right? Is your Zerg planning on pushing out? right? If your Zerg is planning on pushing out and you're up here, it's like, okay, yeah, I have a siege bow, I can shoot like this and it's gonna be great. I'm gonna kill many people. Okay, you know what the enemy's gonna do as soon as your Zerg starts pushing out? The enemy Zerg, as soon as your Zerg starts pushing out, the enemy Zerg is gonna be like, nope, and they're gonna back the fuck up, right? And so when they back the hell up, you know what's gonna happen next is that you're gonna be up here. You're gonna be up here, standing like an idiot, walking around up, north, west, south, east, along this wall, just looking like, oh, I'm gonna wait till an enemy happens to walk towards me so I can hit him again, because it's gonna be great, right? And then your whole Zerg is gonna walk out into the enemy. Now your Zerg is down here with the enemy, and you're still shitting yourself doing nothing up here, right? So now suddenly the wall that was there to protect you, that wall now became basically a barrier, not to protect you, but to protect the enemy from you, right? So just because there's a wall and it seems like it's going to be helpful to you, it does not mean that it's going to be helpful to you the whole time. Yo, Starlo says, bro, that's not what I sound like. Oh man, yeah, but that's how a lot of fucking people sound like when they up here. They're like, yeah, I'm just gonna wait up here, you know, like that's the truth. That's what they do. They just stand there like fucking idiots, and then their caller is like 3 screens away from the territory, and this guy's like, maybe I should walk out. Yeah, I should walk out at that point, right? It's like, bro, like what are you doing, right? So you understand how in certain situations, it's not gonna always be very simple. Where, okay, well, this wall, it's going to protect me from the enemy. I'm a ranged DPS, so I should use walls. Yeah, sure. But that wall now becomes a barrier to your protection, right? Because even look at it. If you're down here and you're engaging here, you have a good angle. Maybe the enemy's not countering you. Okay, that's fine. That's great. I mean, that's the enemy's fault, right? That's great. Exploit it if you can. But then if your Zerg then goes and pushes out, yes, you can probably drop another E here while your Zerg is pushing out, but the enemy's going to back away so much that by the time that your Zerg pushes out into them, and now your Zerg is down here, you're barely going to be walking back north while your Zerg is walking far southwest. So by the time you get, let me go back. By the time you get to this location here, to this choke, the fight is literally 2 screens to your southwest already. Okay? So you see, again, it's all relative, right? I can't tell you guys like, hey, you should do this at this time. You should do that at that time. That's stupid. And if anyone ever tells you that, just know in the back of your head, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, right? This is why I say it, not because I'm being an asshole, but because that's exactly what it is. Now, let's go back here. Let me clear this up. I'm gonna keep the video going if I can. All right. I'm resetting. All right, we're good. All right, so how viable are those walls right now? If the enemy is pushing onto you, then you have to look at, okay, is there a retreat option for me, right? If you're on that west wall, yeah, there's a clear-cut retreat option, right? You can back up into the tower from the northwest wall of that territory, okay? If you're in the middle mage area, right, then you can back up straight north or straight northeast while still being in the territory towards the tower, right? So those are good viable positions for a ranged DPS if you're actually going to be defending the territory. But if you're going to be pushing out of the territory, there is no reason for you to be standing on those walls, right? So now here's the situation. What if you have your Zerg inside the territory and the enemy's outside? Same situation, okay? However, here's the difference. What if you have a flanking ally, like an ally of your Zerg who is gonna flank the enemy from behind? What do you think is gonna happen? Well, if the enemy is being flanked, the enemy is 100% gonna turn on that flank, okay? Which means what? When they turn on that flank, they're 100% gonna walk away from the territory. If that is happening, then you should tell yourself, okay, we are most likely going to be pushing out of the territory, right? So no, you shouldn't stand behind walls because you're probably going to be pushing out the territory, right? Those are all very, very important things. Now, if you're attacking or defending as a melee DPS, that was all for ranged DPS, right? If you're attacking or defending as melee DPS, okay, well, the walls are going to constrict you because you can't hit over walls at all, right? So you have to stand near the chokes, but not so near that you're going to die, Now, if the enemy has a bomb squad that is constantly hitting the northwest angle, then maybe be a little smart and be like, yeah, I'm going to stand to the southeast angle, right? Even though it's not as good of a position, it's going to be safer because the enemy keeps hitting the northwest angle. Okay, those kinds of things are very important. But regardless of anything, melee DPS, you're just gonna have to stand near the chokes, and you're gonna have to push through the chokes at some point, right? Now, if you're defending as a healer in the same territory example, okay, you're defending as a healer. Well, guess what? If you engage the enemy, if the caller calls an engage on the enemy, your tanks are very likely to overextend. You want to know why? Because your tanks, a lot of the tanks are going to be disengaged tanks. And their job is literally to stop the enemy from hitting you, okay? So what does that mean? If the tanks are gonna try to stop the enemy from hitting you, that means the tanks are gonna go deep into the enemy, right? It's obvious. So what's gonna happen is that you need to make sure that you position yourself where you have a clear view of where your tanks are going to overextend. Now, I'm not telling you that as a healer, you should be overextending. What I'm saying is that you should be able to run straight at the place where your tanks, where your disengaged tanks are going to be doing their disengaging. Because a disengaged tank does their job and then they die. Guess what? The next time the enemy engages, there's going to be no one to stop them and you're going to die anyway. So as a healer, sometimes people are like, oh, I'm going to stand all the way in the back because I'm a clothy. It's like, why are you standing so far in the back, bud? It's like, oh, well, it's because I'm a healer, right? Bullshit. That's a terrible excuse because you need to understand your positioning. Your positioning is wherever heals are going to be needed. It's not where heals are needed currently. It's where they will be needed, right? Because if you're not already where the heals will be needed, then when they are actually needed, you're too late. Okay? So you have to think about things straightforward when it comes to your job, but also the situation. So in the case of the territory, well, if you're, on the west wall as a healer, well, that could be pretty good as long as you stay pretty far back, right? Because if your Zerg engages and your disengaged tanks stop the enemy, then you can sprint on that west wall and then throw a W orb directly onto your tanks from their west side, right? Now, the enemy is going to be focusing on engaging the main Zerg on the front, so they're most likely not going to hit you. But if there's already a bomb squad of yours up there that the enemy Zerg is already looking to kill, then you probably don't want to be standing over there, right? You can, but that's a risk, okay? Now, if you're going to stand on the double mages, that's fine. When your D-tanks go in, then you walk up to the wall and throw a W orb over the wall, or you throw your E over the wall, that kind of stuff, right? But again, if you're just a healer and you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna stand back, what the fuck does that mean? That means that you're gonna stand near the fucking the sentry mage? How is that gonna help your disengaged tanks? You're literally 2 screens away from them when they go disengage. But you say, oh, but I'm doing the right thing because I'm staying alive. No, you're doing nothing. You're just a debuff anchor. That's all you are. You're just debuff. Your Zerg is better off without you, right? Now, if you're defending as a tank, then you have to realize that the choke must be held, right? But that doesn't mean you need to stand in the choke, okay? Now, let me go back to showing you guys here. We're at 6 minutes on the video. I'm gonna diagram it again just to show you guys what I mean by this. Okay, so if you're a disengaged tank, all right, that's terrible. If you're a disengaged tank, all right, so that's the thing. Right, there's the west tower, there's the mage. All right, so the farm is down here somewhere, whatever. So if you're a disengaged tank, yeah, you think, oh yeah, I should stand here. I should stand here, right? I should stand in this line. Hell no, absolutely not. Why the hell? I never stand there. Oh shit. If you ever catch me standing there, tell me something, please, because I'm fucking up. All right, never, ever, ever. That's horrible. All right, what you can do is, well, this is what a lot of disengaged tanks do. They go and stand back here. Okay, well, that's fine, except for the fact that if you go from here, you're gonna be able to stop the choke, I guess, but you're not going to stop anything behind. So any of your Zerg that gets caught in this choke, they're already dead, and you were useless. Now you can say, oh, but I stopped. No, you didn't stop shit. You just added to the escalation of the guys that got caught on the choke. Congratulations, right? So it's like, oh, well, where should I stand? Okay, well, what I do very oftentimes is I stand right here, right? Why? Because right here, if the enemy wants to hit me, then they're gonna hit me by myself, or I'm just gonna back up this way, right, through the zigzag, right? Now, if I don't do that, right, if I don't back up northeast, right, let's say the enemy is actually going to be engaging into the choke, so I have actually an angle where I can cut them off, as opposed to stopping them at the choke. I never stop people at the choke. Like D-tanks that stop people at chokes are the D-tanks that die the most. All right, so I go in behind them and I stop their engage from right behind their front line, right behind their engaged tanks. Okay, why? Because this way I engage from here, I'm taking no damage, I engage, and then I come back out, and I have one direction where I can go here down the zigzag, right? Or I have another direction where I can literally just stand back, right? Hold on. I can just engage here, and then I can come back and stand exactly where I was. And when the enemy comes back, then I can just walk back in if I need to. Another reason why you got to stand in situations like that, is because if a healer's up here, they can heal me over the wall. And if an enemy wants to kill that healer, they're going to have to deal with me stopping them first, right? And I'm kind of alluding to some things about how you siege territories, right? We're going to have an episode on territory sieges in a couple months, but essentially this is part of it, right? Is taking over walls, and then once you win those walls, you take over the next wall, right? So let me clean this up. Let's go back. We were at 6 minutes, right? All right, so let me see. Yeah, so that's it for the disengaged tanks, right? You it's not about looking into standing in the choke, it's looking about the situation. Now, if the enemy is constantly hitting that zigzag area, then okay, then you back up, you find a different position, right? I'm not telling you guys what to do in those situations because every situation is different, right? The enemy might be looking to hit that zigzag over and over and over. That means you got to back up, you got to find a different location. But you need to understand that you got to read the enemy, you got to read your own Zerg, you got to read the terrain, you got to read the map in order to understand where the safe spots are, but not just the safe spots, but where you are going to be most useful, right? Let me drink some water. We got to stay hydrated. All right, so defending and attacking as support is going to be very similar, okay? To the healers, right? Here's the thing. Supports, you can't get CC'd. So you have to find a place where the enemy is not likely to drop any CC. And it's actually really simple nowadays. And the reason is because most people don't have any ranged CC anymore. Like, most Zergs don't run soul sites. Most Zergs don't run camlands. Most Zergs don't run one-handed arcanes, right? And if they do, they run one. So generally speaking, if you're behind a wall, you can be pretty certain that CC is not going to land on you, right? For the most part. But at the same time, you have to be in a location where you can reach the choke with your E. Because if the Zerg needs your locus on them and you're not instantly, like, you are not exactly where you need to be for that locus, then you're completely useless, right? A late locus is as good as no locus. All right. So again, understanding the situation will tell you where you should be standing. All right. If the enemy is pushing you a lot and you're defending as a locus and the enemy is pushing you a lot, then you probably don't need to be so far in the front, right? Now, if you're pushing the enemy a lot, then yes, you need to be right at the very front. Why? Because the guys that are going to get stunned or rooted or slowed or whatever are going to be the ones that are even further in front of you, right? So you need to be able to understand those positionings, right? If the enemy is going to turn, like, let's say there's a rock that is clumping everybody, right? Like, as you're walking by it, your whole Zerg clumps up on it. And guess what? Don't stand on that clump, but at the same time, you should stand close enough to that clump of your own allies, because if your enemy decides to hit them right then and there, when they clumped, they're all dead, right? So your job in that situation is to position yourself close enough to that rock where you can cleanse and locust the people out of that, you know, terrible situation, right? And if you don't do that, then guess what? Your Zerg is dead, and that's your fault. Okay, so attacking as ranged DPS, again, the walls protect you, right? But at the same time, if you do a full push into the enemy, then the walls are now, you know, they're now in your way, right? Healers, tanks, we already went over, so you guys understand the concepts attacking and defending with territories. All right. And like I said, we have a very deep, full-blown episode on territories in a few months. It's in the schedule. You guys can look at it. I know it's in a while, but you know, I'm also kind of waiting on that episode because I've heard rumors that SBI, you know, there was a leak video. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. There was a leak video of territories being changed in some shape or form. It looks like we might be having modular territories. I don't know. That's the way it looked from the video, but it may have just been like something that they worked on at some point before and they're not working on it anymore. I don't know. But yeah, so that's why I'm just waiting to see maybe if they release those territories, those new territories before I release the video. If not, then I'll just do the video on these current territories. All right, so now we're going to look at the positioning myth. All right, the positioning myth. Okay, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, all right, I'm gonna pull this shit up again, and I'm gonna show you guys we're at minute 10. All right, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is what I'm talking about, right? And I'm certain you've all seen this shit. All right, so here is the tank, right? These are tanks. All of these are tanks. All right, those are tanks. Okay, and then let's say these are DPS, right? And then these are DPS. Okay, and then you have like some supports, you know, sprinkled in, right? And then you have let me see, let me get white here. You got supports, then you know, you got healers everywhere over here, right? Okay, all right, you guys have seen this shit. Okay, this is the diagram that everybody says, and then they go and color code it. They're like, yeah, like this color is tank, right? And they're like, yeah, big tank, yeah. And then this color, whatever, right? So they fucking do all this shit all the time, right? And here's the problem with this diagram, okay? Is that never are you gonna see this in a ZvZ, never, except for like literally when you dismount, and then that's it. Like when you dismount, your Zerg will look exactly like this if you're a good Zerg. If not, then it won't, but it doesn't matter because after the first engage, this goes to shit. It doesn't matter at all, okay? And what everybody says is like, okay, well, I want you guys to look at, like, look, the reason you have people over here and the reason you have people over here is because right here in the middle, this is the death lane. This is where you go to die, right? And listen, it's true, okay? It's true. If you're standing in the center of your Zerg, you're most likely gonna die because the enemy is standing over here and they're gonna usually engage at the middle, right? So if you're standing here, you're probably gonna die, okay? Yes, this is true. Here's the problem with this, is that the moment your Zerg engages somewhere, okay, your Zerg's gonna be scattered. Why? Because this guy is a tank and he's a disengaged tank. This guy's a clump tank, this guy's a clump tank. They go in, they get clumps, right? And then when they come out, they're going to come back out maybe this way or that way, whatever, right? And then the disengaged tanks are going to go in when these guys are coming out. So the disengaged tanks go in, now they're standing over there. So now what you have is like a situation where instead of having that, you're now having, you know, you got clump tanks up here, you know, and then you got clump tanks over here watching the flank or some shit. And then, you know, and then you have D tanks over here backing up to the back line to catch heals, and then you have fucking you know, your DPS went in, right? Let me actually refresh the whole thing. I'll show you guys. Yeah, so now you have the D tanks up here, right? And then you have maybe a couple D tanks on the cutting off the southwest. Your disengaged tank, your engaged tanks are back here. They're catching heals, right? Now you have your DPS just engaged, and some of them are over engaging. They're up here. Some of them are backing up because they're scared, right? They're all scattered. Right, then you have your supports, and your supports, you got a couple supports that overwent, and then they're back here, and it's like, okay, when you look at this shit, what the fuck? It's like, okay, well, how should I stand? Okay, this is fucking pointless. Okay, this is pointless Because the moment that you engage, this shit is gonna, it's garbage. It's garbage, okay? So the problem with the diagram, all right, let me delete this and let's go back. We're at minute 11, I think. Put at minute 10. I think we're at 10. So the problem with the diagram is that, like, okay, the diagram itself says, okay, tanks are in the front, supports and DPS are going to be behind them, and then you're going to have healers behind them, right? And you're going to have this, like, area in the middle that's going to be like no man's land that you shouldn't stand there for whatever reason. Okay, all right, that's never going to happen, by the way. Like, everybody always stands wherever because you should take space. You shouldn't have a big gaping hole in the middle of your Zerg. That makes fucking no sense, because then the enemy Zerg is just going to engage one side, your east or your west side, and then like just detank on the other side. Like, so no, you can't have an empty middle. You just can't. Okay, now the things that the myth, the positioning diagram myth gets right, okay, generally these positions are a good start. Like I told you, when you dismount, that's kind of what you want to do, right? You know, tanks a little further forward than the cloth a little bit farther back, right? You're assessing the situation, you're seeing it wrong. You're seeing what things are happening, right? What the positioning myth gets wrong is that it does not account for situations. It doesn't account for shit. What if you have that entire setup and you're like, yes, my Zerg is so good, they're following the exact diagram, we're amazing, and then you get fucking flanked by another group on the southwest and you get fucking rolled because you didn't have a single tank on your southwest. And then you're like, oh, well, let me edit the diagram, I'm gonna put a tank on our southwest all the time. Or, okay, that's fucking pointless, because that southwest tank is gonna do literally nothing the entire fight unless you get flanked from the southwest. So now you just have a debuff in your Zerg for no reason, right? And so then the enemy Zerg sees, okay, they have a D tank on the southwest. Yeah, I'm gonna engage him from the southeast, right? I'm gonna flank them from the southeast. And then it's like, oh, now you got rolled because you didn't have D tanks on the southeast, right? It's like, okay, well, hold on. Let me edit the diagram again. I'm gonna put a D tank on the southeast for sure, always. A D tank should always be behind us, right? D tank should always be behind us, no matter what. Bullshit. That's wrong. That's wrong. A D tank should be behind you if it makes sense. And when does it make sense? When you think the enemy's gonna flank you, not just because that's just what you should do at all times. That makes zero sense, right? But if you follow the diagram and people keep adding these like D tanks in the back and all this shit in the diagram, it's wrong. It's absurd. It's pointless, and it's a waste of a D tank, right? The same thing goes for other roles, right? Like supports and healers and DPS, right? Like they say, like, oh yeah, you know, the DPS, you should be spread out across the entire Zerg. It's like, well, not really, not always, right? If there's a lot of enemies to your west and a lot of enemies to your north, then your DPS should probably be on the east, and that way they're only fighting the north guys and not the west guys, right? Like, especially that way, because if you're gonna engage, you're engaging with all your DPS in the same place, as opposed to your DPS all scattered in different directions, and then they're all hitting different clumps and shit, right? So changes in posturing, directions, angles, right? Those things all don't get kind of they're not accounted for with the diagram. Okay, they're not. And another thing that is not accounted for in the diagram is, what if you take losses, right? This diagram is like, yeah, we'll have 3 tanks in the front, 2 tanks in the southwest, 2 tanks in the southeast, and now we're going to be covered. Okay, but what if you lose 2 tanks, right? Who's going to rotate where and why, right? What if you lose, you know, some of your ranged DPS? Are you going to continue playing Kite when you're losing ranged DPS? No, because Kite is better for ranged DPS. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna play melee style. Okay, so you gotta change it up. And if you're playing melee, then that diagram is totally different, right? The diagram is completely different. So all these things is, again, very often they'll tell you guys about this diagram as being like the holy grail of positioning. It's at the best, it's an informative diagram for when you dismount, at the best. Outside of that, it's absolutely pointless, okay? And it's very important to understand that, all right? Now, here's the thing. How do we fix this myth, right? How do we actually fix this myth that keeps on, coming out and, screwing people up because they think that they're doing the right thing because they're following this diagram, right? You have to get rid of rigid structures. That's a hard sentence. You have to get rid of rigid structures, all right? You have to get rid of people playing with one mindset, with one mentality, right? If this happens, you need to do this. If that happens, you need to do that, right? You need to take that out of your Zerg completely and of your own playstyle completely. What you need to do instead is you need to teach your Zerg adaptability, right? Your Zerg needs to be able to adapt to situations. Let's look at the fight right now that we're watching, right? Like, just because I've done this before. I want you guys to pay attention to this fight. All right. And by the way, I'm not even watching, okay? But I just watched it right now and I'm just gonna pop to see what we're looking at, right? So we're getting engaged down from the southeast. Let's back it up a little bit. All right, so we have the Zerg here, right, on the west, and then on the territory, and the enemies to the northeast. All right, so we're walking into them northeast. Our guy here is a heavy mace. Okay, he's jumping in, snare charging. I'm not sure why. If his Zerg is looking to engage right now, then that's a good I like the snare charge. If his Zerg is not looking to engage, then he's wasting it. Well, let's see. All right, yep. So Rapids is the caller here, and he's going in and he's engaging, and that's great. Okay, so I like this guy's snare charge. Zamir's, right? This is the tank that we're looking at. Pretty good snare charge. I like it. He purged and silenced them before the air compressed. This is beautiful. I love this play so far. Let's see. All right, they hit. All right, what is he doing now? He drops a Q. Okay, now he's walking forward. Now, here's the situation. All right, what do we see in front of us? Well, we see the enemy in front of us. They're getting hit. What is going to happen next? He used his Judicator helmet, right? What is happening next? The only thing he has as disengaged right now is his Duskweaver armor. Okay, and the truth is that's not going to stop shit. So he's going to fucking die. On top of that, he has no potions. So he has no defensives. So if he walks up northeast right now to try to do his job as a disengaged tank, he's gonna die. That's the truth, okay? So you can say very easily, right, an armchair general is gonna be like, well, here's Amir's is a D tank, and he should be walking into the enemy to get ready to stop them. It's like, no, he shouldn't, because he's gonna die. There's no reason he should walk into him. Let's see what he does. All right, so he's backing up, okay? Duskweaver right here. I'm not gonna say anything bad because had he put it down over there, it would have been his own death. And so had he not put it down, it would have been useless anyway. So might as well put it right here in this little corner. I guess I could see this play. It's not bad. Okay. What he should have done is not wasted his fucking Judy helmet earlier. But now what does he see? Okay. So now he puts that down. Okay, great. Now what does he see? Okay, he sees a bomb squad on the east, right? You see this bomb squad coming around the east? I don't like that bomb squad. That bomb squad looks hungry. They look hungry for some fucking kills. I don't want to be near, right? So what is the position you should be taking right now? Well, you don't have any defensives. You don't have any disengage. You don't even have a sprint. So you're useless. Walk away. Go back down to Choke West. In fact, I wouldn't even go back down to Choke West because the enemy's engaging, so they're going to hit here and over there by the West Choke. So what I would do is I would just walk southwest here into this little channel down southwest. And I promise you, he won't take any damage, right? But again, how do we know where he should be standing, right? The positioning. How do we know his position? Well, it's by situational awareness, right? His situation is he has nothing to do. The enemy's engaging. He's about to get flanked. So he should just walk away, right? That's the point. So how can you know what you should do by assessing the situation? Let's look. So the enemy's engaging and he's walking south. Oh my God. He walked southwest. That was beautiful, except he turned around to drop a Q. Oh, he's trying to stop this enigmatic. Yo, this guy's a good player. Zamir's. I like this guy. He might pay for that though. He might pay for that, but that's okay. He's got balls. I respect it. Yeah. Oh, well, that guy got killed anyway, so it didn't matter. Now he walks southwest. Look at that. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay, now he comes back before he should have, right? He was playing great until this moment. I don't even, is he gonna die? He probably not. The video keeps going. He was playing great until this moment. The reason that he was playing great until this moment is because he walks back. Why? Because he didn't see the Zerg go in, the bomb squad go in, right? You wait. It doesn't mean, okay, I walk down here for a little bit and now I walk back. No, don't be a fucking robot. Assessing the situation means you assess and you reassess and you reassess, right? If they still haven't hit, then you know what you should do. Keep walking southwest, right? Why? Because you don't want to die, right? And right here, this is the critical moment. He's going southwest. He's fine. He's safe. He's not going to get killed. And if he does, it's because they engaged only on him. Remember I mentioned that earlier? They engage only on him. That means he's probably going to be safe. And there's probably going to be healers up here in the northwest that are going to protect him. So he'll be fine. This is his moment right here. This is the fuck up, right? Everything was great. He was a great player until this moment, right? Now he gets caught. He tried to snare charge out. That's not the way the game works. He gets hit. Oh my God, this guy lived. That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, he didn't live because of himself. He lived because his allies saved him, right? And that's a bad situation. Hold on. That's a bad situation to be in, is where you know you're completely relying on your allies. You should rely on your allies, but not because you made a mistake, right? So that's the main point of the positioning myth, right? Is that you need to teach adaptability. You need to adapt to all the changing situations, continuously changing situations, okay? The situation is king when it comes to positioning, all right? I cannot tell you enough how many times I've tried to teach people this, and then they have somebody else go and tell them, hey, no, if you're doing this, then you should stand over there. It's like, that is so wrong. Don't teach that to your members, and don't teach that to your, you know, the other players in your Zerg, right? You need to teach better skills. All right. Now, the open world example, just really quick, right? When the fight begins, you want to use the diagram that I showed you guys, right? When you engage, the clumps are going to happen. And now you got to pay attention to flanks. You got to pay attention to casualties. You got to pay attention to bombers. Now, let me drink some water real quick. Keeping hydrated. All right. So you got to pay attention to all the different things that happen during engages and disengages. You're not all going to be standing exactly in that same format every single time. Nor is it the right thing to always stand in that format, right? If you have a wall to your west, then you don't really need tanks watching the west, right? And if you have a pivot point like a corner, right? Then you want to have more tanks on that corner than you do on the open ground. Okay? That kind of stuff is very important to understand. So again, in an open world, especially more in the open world, you got to realize that repositioning, every single time that you move around, you push the enemy pushes you. Every single time you move the whole fight somewhere, remember, watching the map, right? Reading the map. So every time the fight moves to a different area, you now have a different scenario with different walls and different rocks and different hills and different angles, okay? And you have to adapt to that situation. Again, keep it in the back of your head. What is the place where whether I'm DPS, tank, support, healer, it doesn't matter. What is the situation in which I am most useful right now? Am I most useful in the front when I have no defensives? No. You might want to back up, right? But if you have all your defensives up, then yeah, you might be more useful in the front, right? That's what you need to pay attention to. So, in general, when you're in the open world, we talked about corners, right? Like if there's a corner, like, you know, like you're walking north and then there's a rock to your east and then you're going to walk east around the rock. Okay. It's going to clump people up. We talked about that earlier, right? So again, if you're cutting corners, that's a new danger, right? Because corners will clump people, and people clumped means that the enemy might hit that, right? So as a healer, first of all, you don't want to walk on that clump, but you also want to be close to that clump to be able to heal it. Disengage tanks. You want to, just because the main Zerg is to the far east around the rock, they can't hurt you. doesn't mean you should be watching them. You should be watching the small bomb squad that does have an angle on that clump, right? Again, adapt. Every second of every fight, you adapt to new situations, right? So now the last part is going to be the conclusion real quick, right? Just a couple of takeaways. Nothing too crazy, right? Just kind of the things that we've kind of learned. In general, you want constant reassessment, right? The situations are going to be fluid, okay? And just like the situations are fluid, you need to be like water, right? You take shape of the situation, right? Think of the situation as the container, and you're the water, and you take the shape of the container, right? Doesn't matter what shape it is, you're gonna take that shape, okay? And you need to understand that every single time that anything happens, even if you don't move, the Zerg doesn't move. If there's one death, that changes the situation, right? So you have to understand how these things change the situation and then reassess constantly. Keep reassessing. Again, remember, the 4 things are very important, right? Read the terrain, read the enemy, read your Zerg, and read the map. If you do those 4 things right, then understanding where you should be positioned is like, it's not even a question. It's an automatic. It's an obvious thing, okay? But it takes time to train up and to understand how to read those situations, okay? The only way to do it is by constantly doing it over and over and teaching yourself over time, all right? Identify the changes that are happening and adapt to them as necessary, all right? Even if it means you're checking literally all these things every second, every 2 seconds, every 3 seconds. Or sometimes it's a really slow fight and you gotta reassess every 30 seconds, right? That's the way you gotta be. But again, be like water, right? Sometimes the situation's fast, so you gotta reassess fast. Sometimes the situation's slow, so you can reassess every, few seconds more, right? The biggest thing I can say about positioning is that I don't want you guys to tunnel vision ever, okay? The moment you start focusing too much on one thing, you're gonna miss the others. And when you miss the others, you're gonna expose yourself and probably die, right? So what I mean by this is you're so busy reading the enemy that you forget to read the terrain. You forget to read your Zerg. You forget to read the map, right? And the reason I use that example is because that's the number one example that people have mistakes in, right? Is that people get so focused on looking at the enemy that they forget that their enemy is standing on terrain that may be advantageous or disadvantageous to them. And the terrain that the enemy is standing on will tell you a lot about what the enemy can and can't do. Again, there's no reason to try to disengage the west side if the west side has no DPS, right? Or if the west side has a wall, what are you going to disengage? The wall, right? So you have to be able to read the terrain, the enemy, the Zerg, and the map, right? And don't tunnel vision, okay? Now, the last tidbit, I guess, the last little thing I'm going to leave you guys with today is the caller is not God, okay? The caller does not know everything. The caller can't see everything, okay? You need to understand the calls of the caller, but apply them to the situation in which you are in order to understand what you should do. I'm gonna give you guys one quick example that I think everybody's been in before. There's a choke, and the caller says, push across the choke. Go! We're full pushing the choke right now, go! Right? But if you look around and you're like, well, I don't have any defensives. I don't even have my sprint up. Should I cross that choke? Fuck no. Are you stupid? Hell no. Let your Zerg walk through first. If they make it across, then you walk through. If they don't, just stay back. Just stay back. Because why? Because if you walk in that choke and you have no way to defend yourself, guess what? All you're gonna do in that choke is gonna escalate damage on the rest of your Zerg and get them killed. Okay? Now your caller might be mad at you later and be like, "You didn't cross the choke. I hate you. You're a terrible player." And then that's when you tell them, "Hey, listen, I couldn't cross the choke. I had no boots. I had no defenses. My cleric robe was down, right? My resist potion was down. Okay? Whatever. So why I cannot cross that choke, right? Or maybe it's a little different. Maybe they say cross the choke and you went and crossed the choke very fast. Now, let's say the caller doesn't say cross the choke, but you cross the choke anyway because you read the situation and you're like, yeah, obviously we need to cross the choke right now to kill the enemy. Okay, great. That's awesome. However, you're still going against the caller because the caller hasn't actually told you to cross the choke, has they? Right? So therefore, you're going against the caller's wishes. But guess what? Then the caller says, cross the choke, and you already knew that was going to be the next call, so you already did it, so you don't have to cross the choke. You already crossed it, you're safe, and you're where you need to be. That's effective, right? So again, assess your situation. The caller doesn't know everything, and they cannot tell you specifically what you should be doing because only you have control of your own situation. They don't know if you have your defensives up, right? So all these things are very, very important. All right, and that's it for today. Yo, Latorian, what's up, man? You came at the very end, Latorian, but it's okay. I'm gonna upload this on YouTube later. You can watch it on YouTube later, brother. All right, so that's it for today. I appreciate you guys. Let me know right now. Quick questions, comments, concerns. I'll give you guys about a minute because I know sometimes the chat is a little bit delayed. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them in the chat right now. And then other than that, we're gonna call it off. Next week we're back to the series next week, the calling style series. We're gonna be doing tsunami, which is the flood style, right? So it's the style that dominated most of last season, and it's the style that's kind of starting to fade away right now. But it's, you know, we got to talk about all of them anyway because they're all important. So Starlo says another great episode, learn a lot. I appreciate you, man. I'm glad. Make sure you guys share this video, share the link to the Twitch, share the link to the YouTube and all that. You know, I'm trying to get as many people to watch these as possible so that we can spread the knowledge as much as possible. I know the videos are long, man, and I understand that. I understand that the videos are long and a lot of people just don't have the time for that. And that's why I'm working on a project to try to like make smaller videos. But that's outside of the regular episodes, right? Like this is gonna be like, I don't know, maybe I'm gonna call them like shorts or something, you know, something like that, like maybe 5-minute videos type thing, you know, like quick little things for people to learn. But yeah, that's coming at some point. Always share with my guild, Motley Crusaders. Hell yeah, man! I appreciate you. Yeah, little by little, man. Little by little. Learning takes a long time, and a lot of people complain. They're like, "Oh my god, the videos are so long." Yeah, but there's a lot, man. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of things to learn, and the truth is the majority of the players in the game don't know these things. And if they did, they would play so much better. So, all right. Anyway, I'm gonna close it up. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.